Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Xpert Talk on sustainability in engineering with myself and also Gabriel, who's been so kind to join us, who is an engineer with a big passion in sustainability, and he has a real hands-on approach to the field. Today, we will be talking about taking global matters into your own hands and how one can base one's career in pursuing a higher purpose. But before I introduce Gabriel, I'll just give you more of an idea of what Nexgen Careers are and what it is that we do. So our main mission at Nexgen Careers is about supporting individuals in their career exploration journey, their career development journey. So we have a digital platform where we have courses on career design and skills development. And we also run on-site programs, partly here in Barcelona, where myself and also Gabriel is based. But we also run programs in Cape Town and in Rome and in other parts of the world. And we also offer free resources about the fields that are most prominent in the future world of work. We do this on our website and also on our digital platform. So yeah, free for everyone to check out, and in the fields that are most prominent in the future world of work. So today we will be talking about engineering, for instance, but we also dive into science, into social impact. I guess today is a little bit mixed between social impact and engineering, but we also talk about health and wellness and hospitality and many more fields. So like basically no matter what you're interested in, you will be able to find something that you're interested in our free resources. And we also run these weekly Xpert Talks that we host both on our online platform and also open for everyone on LinkedIn. Just continue to keep an eye out for these talks if you enjoy this one. And I guess we'll get started. Let me introduce Gabriel, who's actually like today's guest. I don't know, Gabriel, if you want to introduce yourself or if I should give like a quick introduction. Okay, I'll go. So Gabriel is brought up in France, but now living in Barcelona, and has gone like sort of like a traditional path when it comes to engineering, did the whole school thing, got a degree, and then went and worked on various, but yeah, he realized that he had a sustainability, interest and passion. We will talk about how he came across that interest later on, but he worked on projects with, for instance, like Evian, Biotherm, and L'Oreal, and also done a bunch of volunteering with various NGOs when it comes to sustainability. So he's definitely an expert within this field. And we're so happy to have you, Gabriel. Thank you for joining us and welcome. Now, please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Cecilia. Hi, everyone.
So welcome, Gabriel. Thank you for joining. I just wanted to ask you if you wanted to introduce yourself further, or if we should move on along.
I can complete what you just said, talking about the engineering background that I have. So in particular, the skills I have, which might be interesting for the people listening and seeing this now afterwards. So my background is what we call general engineering in France, which means we know a little bit of everything. So mechanical engineering, industrial engineering, energy engineering. And then I went on to learn electronics engineering by myself during internships, and specialized a little bit in energy engineering. Also studied nanotechnologies and AI for fun, but mostly during my working years as a the technical part of my job was mostly in hardware engineering. So either electronics design or programming, but also machine buildings and devices building, with also a bit of experience in IoT, which is just a small portion of what you can do in hardware engineering. So yeah, this is the more technical skills, I'd say, and also great focus on prototyping, quick prototyping, getting things done quickly, dirty, but getting things done and tested, which is part of the process of product design nowadays.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. You've definitely done a little bit of everything, which is really, really cool. And we talked a little bit about that you have this whole engineering background, but maybe that you didn't understand from the start that you, hold on one second, there we go, that you wanted to work in sustainability, for instance. And like, after we had an intro conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I came to think about like, how can I incorporate sustainability into this talk so that everybody understands what it is that we're talking about. And I came like, since we both are based in Europe, and I don't know how many of you are, but at least during this summer, we've noticed a lot of very clear signs that climate change is hitting our planet. For instance, I was just telling you before now that I was spending some time in Sweden, and we had like we had tropical storms in Sweden, which was so weird. And here in Spain, we've had forest fires, and also like across like the whole southern Europe, we've had forest fires. So it's like, now I think it's becoming more clear than ever to us that climate change is real, and it's becoming less of an abstract concept to many, and it's becoming more of something that they can actually see and like, holy shit, this is actually happening. However, I wanted to like talk to you about a little bit, or if you can tell us a little bit about how and when you understood that, holy shit, I can actually like do something about this, and this is what I want to dedicate some of my career to.
Yeah, so I start with not answering the question.
Great, perfect.
Because you mentioned that we've seen all those changes, and now people acknowledge climate change in its reality, and it's actually still not true everywhere in the world and for every citizen in the world. So there is, and I think it's one of the roles that we have to play in our jobs and outside of our jobs, is using this scientific background we have to tell people about what is happening, to explain what science is, how it works. It's still not understood at all. And we saw that with COVID-19, unfortunately, but still with climate change, we see it. That, yes, we are not 100% sure, but because it's a science, and science, you're not trying to be right, you're trying to be the less wrong possible given the tools that you have. And human spirit is a really narrow tool. Going back to the initial question, how did I decide to dedicate to sustainability, basically? So I didn't know really what I wanted to do until I was, quite recently, actually. So I graduated from high school, had all the good grades, so I could basically choose everything I wanted to do. I wanted to do, by ego, something really difficult. So I had basically medicine and engineering. And I picked engineering because I also wanted to travel. It was something that was really appealing to me. And then I discovered the issues actually through experience, as we mentioned. So there are three things I can talk about. First is I was born and raised next to the sea in a small town in France. And one day I wake up to the city being completely destroyed by a big storm. And not far away from me, like an hour drive from me, people actually died in the western part of France because of storms, which is something you can't imagine, because in the Western world, you have this big promise, which is safety. You're going to be safe, don't worry. Actually, I witnessed that not. Still in the Western world, when I traveled to Australia, so with school there, we had the opportunity to talk about ozone layer depletion, about coral reef dispersion. So all of those topics, I also got to witness them firsthand and talk to people there. And then I also did a first travel between my two first years of engineering school to Nepal, and then I discovered what a power shortage was. And I discovered that if you don't have access to clean water, if you don't have access to energy, then you can't do anything. You're actually going to live a life that is not going to be comfortable, to say the least. And you're going to have issue to develop everything that we take for granted here. So I decided that engineering can be a good way to start. And I decided to specialize in energy engineering at that time, because I felt like if you have energy, you can do basically everything. Because you can then clean the water, you can give access to knowledge through the internet, you can get access to better medical, to better health system, basically. So that's what I did. And then after that technical thing, I discovered another layer, which we will talk about later, I think, which is the almost cultural, philosophical issue behind sustainability. And that, yes, technique is good, technology can do good, but it's only a tool, and it depends on how you use it. And sometimes it's better not to do than doing things the wrong way. So That's a sort of like another level of understanding that I had only years after that.
I'm just going to let another person into the conversation. Perfect. Great. Yeah, so you really got the hands-on experience and got to see all of these things with your own eyes. And you decided to take action, which is what you've been doing. But I think we all know that it takes a while to see a real change happen, because obviously people of power knew many years ago that this was a thing, and we're still like struggling in the world and all like globally with these issues, and it can take a while to get any results. So I just wanted to ask you, have you, like, throughout your journey, which might not have been super long, you know, considering how long these processes take, but have you been able to see any change throughout your time working within sustainability?
So the short answer is no. Now the better answer is that when you work in R&D processes, which is what I did basically, so when you're working on new things, you have the opportunity to try and put energy into something that is not perfect, that is going the right direction. It means something that's per se might be actually worse than what you had before, but you know that if you tune it correctly, if you do the right things afterwards, you're going to catch up to a better solution. So this is something I witnessed in product development, that you had products that were not better, but that were allowing a shift in the product line or in the business line that might lead later to actual changes. And now this is the really technical part. And now the other layer is that you have the opportunity to have an indirect impact by talking to C-levels, to customers, to managers of all of different companies. You can plant a seed in their head. And of course, this is a mid-term, long-term game. Like, you don't know what's going to grow out of it, but still you have, like I had this opportunity to discuss the issue, to discuss the possible solutions, to talk to them about what we should add, what we should do, what could be done. And this seed that you plant, well, you can hope that later on it goes into something impactful. And it actually happened for one of my projects when we designed a CSR policy for a large company, and now it's moving, it's in action. Of course, it's not as fast as I wanted. Of course, it's not as ambitious as what I wanted, but still it's better than it was before that. And yeah, and it goes also to, it goes with, I think, what I said earlier about the role of the engineer, of bringing science and tech into perspective and into the discussion. And not, we have a new generation, I think, at least in Europe, and I hope everywhere, of people that get asked how, like, how did you do this? Like, please do this. And instead of saying, I don't know, I'm gonna work on it, that's, why would you do that? Like, why are we doing this? And they are going one step further in the thinking. We had a history of specialization, and now other specialists are asking again questions to their managers. So I think we have this motion going on, which is interesting.
That's really interesting that you mentioned in that people are asking, like, why and how did you do it? Because I don't know about engineering, but what I hear from other industries is that a portfolio of how you solve the problem is so important in order to land new projects, get new jobs, to understand your way of thinking. And especially as an engineer, I can imagine, since your job is to solve problems, is that something that is required when you're looking for, from your experience, just to follow up a little bit on that? Is that a requirement?
I didn't catch the question, sorry.
Yeah, so for instance, if you've done a project and you've solved a problem or been a part of a project, like, do you document that and put that, like, sort of in your rucksack for when you're going to apply for new projects?
Yes, so portfolio is something from what I've seen, it's something really done in the US, because students have a lot of time to do their projects, so they document it a lot. And when I did interview for engineers who were based in the US or even the UK, they had this culture of doing projects and showing them. And I think then for my type of profile, that I was not a specialist, but more a generalist with some projects, I always talk about the projects and not only the skills that I used, because it gives you an overall idea of how the skills were applied. Because like people, they don't need to know I can use they don't need to know exactly how good I am at Python for Raspberry Pi. They need to know that I was able to build a full machine that ensures safety for an application in a really complicated area. So yeah, the fact of use, and it is something I've done recently, and it applies mostly for position with more of a design, I'd say, focus. So not only like pure engineering of, okay, you need this, but something more holistic there. Yes, you need to show what you've done, because that's the best way to talk about you.
And promote yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. And building a little bit onto that, like you mentioned that portfolio is important for your career, and something else that you've been doing is a lot of volunteering, which is also like really good thing to do to gain experience, but also to help out, obviously, in organizations that really need it. So I just wanted to touch a little bit upon that and ask you about your volunteering projects and how that has helped you in your career.
Yeah, so I would talk mostly about four things I'm doing at the moment. I start with Battery Associates, because we have Bharat here in the call who also works with me there. So Battery Associates is an organization that was founded with the idea of helping batteries being the solution to sustainable transition in the energy sector. And we are a group of volunteers working on different projects. I'm leading a hardware project to develop a little device that would be open source and low cost, and which has a lot of the industry is interested in that for experimentation, but also for markets that I think are interesting, such as the second-hand market for batteries, which is something like a business case that's really strong at the moment. So this experience is for me a good way to not get rusty in terms of technical skills, because I get to do design, industrial, like electronic design, prototyping, coding. So there's really a way for me to not forget what I know how to do, and also get challenged to do something at the industrial level. Another thing I do is I am part of a network of young people, which is called the Global Shapers, actually part of the World Economic Forum. And it's a globalized network, so it means I can find someone to talk to in any big cities around the world, which is absolutely amazing. And it's a way also to get to talk to like-minded people, or people not like-minded, but that can handle the conversation with you. Meet a lot of people. Actually, Battery Associate that I just mentioned, I know through this network. And this leads me to the third part, which is the Youth for Sustainable Food initiative that we led with another Global Shapers, with the team of Global Shapers. It's also using that network to leverage a new initiative. And the last one would be Climate Fresk, which is a workshop that I am a facilitator with, basically teaching people about the IPCC report in a game, card games. So trying to make them understand how climate change works. And all of that enables me to develop different set of skills. So I have hardware skills, I have animation skills, I have diplomacy skills with a Youth for Sustainable Food System manifesto. I have to do a bit of commercial, almost so talking to different organizations to spread the word. So we talk to people from the UN, from a lot of different organizations around the world. We aim to go to events such as COP26 or things like that. And Climate Fresk is also a way for me to learn how to teach, how to get information through to people, which is critical in every aspect of your life, be it professional or personal. So that's getting your skills to a new level, doing something you enjoy. Of course, it's a luxury. Like, you need to have either a good job on the side or money in the bank. So it's not something that anyone can do, and I'm really aware of that. It's really a luxury to do. But if you have time and energy to spare, it's a great way for you to grow as an individual and as a professional.
Yeah, and I think that's really good advice. Like you don't necessarily need to get like a side hustle or an internship where you might not even get to do the things that you want to improve on. Instead, you can like choose your own project and work with people that you choose on your own to gain that experience. And it's a much more like, I don't know, humble approach to gaining work experience. It's not always about hustling. I bet that you just said that you work on 4 different projects, and I bet it's a lot of hustling, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. And you're doing something good for people who need it, which is really good. So now I wanted to look a little bit into the future. We want to discuss a little bit about trends and what we can see the future will hold in the world of engineering, because engineering, as many other fields, are changing massively. And how can, people who are pursuing engineering or looking to get into engineering, like what should we be focusing on? What trends? What's going to be happening?
Yeah, it's a really vast question. So the first answer that I had is it really depends on the industry that you're working on as an engineer, because techniques and things are going to differ. But still, there are at least, there are some things I can talk about. The first one, I think, is that now when we are mentioning impact, which has been a super broad term for a lot of years, now we finally get to put numbers behind this impact. So there is a massive explosion, I think, of the life cycle assessments in all of the industry to try to quantify the impact. It's actually, I mean, from my perspective, as I felt it growing up, has been brought to the table by the debates between electrical vehicles and internal combustion vehicles, because we have all of these communication going on back and forth of like, okay, an EV is absolutely solution if you go to Poland, or but if you do the full life cycle analysis, it's actually 3 times better in France or something like that. But the numbers are wrong. But so we have this debate around these particular points regarding mobility, and it spreads throughout the whole thing. So I think if you can get your skills into that, like get a sense of how it works, it can be something super valuable. Then at a more global, I say, scale, I think we are entering kind of a clash between 2 types of way we see the development of the industry. We have low tech versus high tech, and I can give examples in 3 different industries. For example, in energy, we have the development full gas of renewable energies, battery technologies, and so on and so forth, which can be part of the solution. And on the other hand, we have a massive call for sobriety. So we have a call to use way less energy to change the way we live, especially in the Western world. And those are not antagonists, like they should work together, but we still see a lot of polarization and debate. It's also the same with agriculture, for example, where we have, on the one hand, drones monitoring, super high-tech approach to agriculture with sensors everywhere, IoT everywhere, and basically trying to monitor the best we can and to give exactly what is supposedly needed. And on the other hand, we have the agroecology movement, for example, agroforestry or other regenerative agriculture movements, where we say we actually don't understand that much what's happening where we're growing the tomatoes, so let's just leave the land a little bit alone, let him give it time and try to mix things, so you're not going to have this super great yield that you had before, but you're going to have in the midterm or long term something way better than what we have actually. And we have the same with mobility. We have, on the one hand, autonomous vehicles, which is one way to see the future. So we're going to sit on cars and it's going to do the whole job. Of course, those vehicles, they need a lot of inputs, and a lot of metals, a lot of electronics, a lot of energy. And on the other hand, we have soft mobility. So how can we actually not get into autonomous vehicles, but redesign our cities so that we can have soft mobilities, we can walk everywhere, we can bike everywhere. So we have this kind of clash between almost a Silicon Valley transhumanist point of view, super techie, and going back to the roots view. But if I can talk all about general trends which I've seen and which you are sure are going to keep on exploding, we have the talks about plastic free. So how can we get rid of plastic? This is something everyone is talking about because we got addicted to it, and now everybody's so used to it that it's actually hard to find an alternative for many applications. We have reuse, which is the same. We're doing full cycle, so we used to have this bottle of Coca-Cola that you put back in the basket, and that would be clean and reused. And then we switched to plastic, and we actually that was better. So how can we go back without giving and people hate this go back mentality. Like if you tell them you're going to the past, it's something that you're going to have a clash against. So you have to make that sexy again, say. We have the impact on health of people, and that's true for almost everything. You can think of mobility. So what's the impact of an internal combustion engine on the health of people? What's the impact of beauty creams? What's the impact on the health of what you drink, what you eat? There's a lot of things to do there. And yeah, of course, you have the carbon talk. Everyone's pledging carbon neutrality. This is only going to get bigger and bigger, and energy use is strongly correlated to that vision. So yeah, to sum it up, there is the life cycle assessment, so really getting ahead of what is impact, how can we understand it. There is this clash between low tech and high tech that you have to understand. You don't necessarily have to say I'm on this one side or this other side. This is not Star Wars, but you have to understand both point of views and see where each of the things works well. And then you have the biggest, I say, pressing issues of plastic, of use of energy, or carbon pollution, impacting health, and some new ways to see supply chains with reuse.
So many big areas to focus on, like there, it's all of these, big questions that we're all talking about. And how we talked a little bit about this before we jumped on this call, Gabriel, how is the educational system adapting to these changes that are happening? And it's changes because we need all this knowledge, we need our engineers to have all this knowledge, but is it provided in schools, or how can we gain that knowledge elsewhere, if you will?
Yeah, just before that, I forgot to mention social impacts before, because I talked a lot about sustainability in terms of ecology, but you can have the best ecology model you have if you have slavery, and if people are dying at 12 years old, then it's useless. It's also something that engineers, we tend to forget somehow that they are actually human beings on this earth, but it's one of the key critical points of when you talk about life cycle assessment, is how we impact in the ecology, but also how people working, what are their work conditions, how do they have a good wage, and so on and so forth. So going back to education, I'd say almost everything I use on a daily basis, I didn't learn in school. I learned outside of schools, working in companies or working in side projects. I feel like it's changing. Actually, I'm going to talk about what I know about France. It's changing. When I graduated, I was the first generation of students to sign a manifesto, which was called the Wake Up of how's it called? Of students for an ecological manifesto from the students for ecology, something like that. Basically, but we're the first generation to do that. Now, this organization is super big. It's providing a lot of information to students about the companies, like how good or bad they're related with sustainability. They're calling out greenwashing campaigns. So they're really an activist movement. And within schools, we have more and more initiatives. So I talked about Climate Express earlier. This is something that is now growing and that they do in a lot of schools. So when you come back first year, second year, third year, you have this workshop of 3-4 hours where you learn about climate change, and that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
We're still lagging behind a lot. I had, for example, classes about how you should measure the pressure to apply, what should be the torque on a screw, which is really complicated subject. I know it sounds stupid, but it's the most difficult subject I've ever done. It's worse than quantum mechanics. And this is actually something you can do today with really good software. Okay, you need to understand the basic physics behind that, and you need to be able to find the information. But I'd rather have a class on what's the life cycle assessments, what's the impact of a product, how does the different assembly processes compare. And this is still not taught at school. And as we talked about just before this interview, there is a lag between what society needs and what industry provide, and there is not a lag between what industry needs in terms of skills and what education provides. And so to address this gap, there are different ways to do it, and one is self-learning. We now have a lot of platforms to learn online. There is doing, as stupid as it sounds, but using your time to do things, actually getting paid for it, and if it's a job, then it's even better. If not, and if you have the luxury to be able to do that as a side hustle, then you can do it. And there is the power of network also that I mentioned earlier, that you can learn a lot by talking an hour on the phone to someone you know and who's an expert in something, more than reading a boring article, scientific paper, which have a lot of value, but you need to learn how to read a scientific paper again.
Yeah, can we call you when we have questions and want to learn anything, Gabriel?
Yeah, sure. And what I like to do is, if I can answer, I can answer, and if I can't, I try to find someone who can. And that's actually the mentality also that I've seen in a lot of entrepreneurs in our companies around sustainability. We're not in a competition that much, because as it was framed, I don't know who said that, but basically we are at war against nature, and if we win, we lose. So now the goal is, how can we all work together to go to the right direction? And this is something you see in a lot of companies. Recently, Jura, which is a plant-based company here in Barcelona, the founders are traveling around the world, and they posted on LinkedIn, okay, so we tested all the products from all other companies, and we support them. So if you want to buy them, it doesn't really matter if you buy us or the others. We all have the same drive and the same direction we want to go to. So so a shift in mentality, I think, for companies, and that's a bit far-fetched from your initial question, but it was just.
I think it's great. I think it's a great answer, and I think you're pointing out something good there, which I find, because I've done a lot of interviews with people within circular economy that are active within sustainability, and I feel like there's no selfishness. They just want to work for a good cause, and everyone just wants the world to move in the right direction. So the more companies that have this approach, the better. And I think it's great that you pointed that out. But I think you gave a fantastic answer. So I want to, we've been talking about some heavy subjects. We've been talking about, the future and all that, and sustainability and the importance of it. Now I want to get a little bit more personal for a minute, just to highlight a little bit more about you as a person. And it would be cool to learn, because we all have idols, right? We all have people who we look up to, and it can be, singers, it can be sports stars, it can be your mom, your dad. But within the field that you're in, who would you say that you look up to? Is there anyone that you're hey, you guys should go follow this person because they're awesome? They're inspiring me.
It's actually not that easy of a question, but I came up with two names. One was pretty straightforward. It's Kate Warworth, who is actually not an engineer. She's an economist, and she's the mother of the concept of donut economics. And what I like about what she did is that she summed up a lot of complexity in a simple model, but that doesn't take out the complexity of the world. And I think this is something that really resonates to what an engineer do and should do, is, okay, I want to make it as simple as possible, but without taking out the complexity, the interactions, and so on and so forth. So it's really inspiring. And as a person also, what I like is that she's always positive and smiling, and she has a great energy. She's humble, happy to share. There's a lot of webinars, of things like that. And this kind of positive attitude is really inspiring for me. And she managed, as I say, to make a super boring topic into something sexy, which is something that we should do as engineers. And the example I take is I have on my shelves 3 heavy books of classical economy from Jean-Baptiste Say, which are filled with barbarous sentences, some equations, something is really trying to say, okay, this is how the word is, final point, this is what we should do. Which is really more in this higher field, saying, we should stay humble. This is what we should care about. These are some ways we could do it, but I have no definite answers. This is just a framework for you to think. I think it's super inspiring. And another guy is French. It's called Corentin de Châtelperron, which is really
I think you're
long
going to
name.
have to spell that out for me later.
I think I will. And what he did is he created something called the Low Tech Lab. So promoting what low tech is. So low tech is a way to solve issues by using really few materials, by using really few energy. And this is what is called, I don't remember the name, but it's actually also a concept from India it's basically what they do every day, because they solve issues with nothing, and it's just super clever. But he basically did two things. One is he went around the world with a boat that he built himself with basically nothing. He had 2 chicken to get some eggs, and he had, and it's not chicken, but yeah, it's chicken. Is it? Yeah, I think so. He had a pump to get clean water out of seawater, even if he had to pump like an hour and a half or 2 hours for that. And then he said, okay, people actually, I traveled around the world. I saw people in different parts of the world, and I remember I was shocked by how clever they were and how little they needed to create things. So he said, okay, we're going to map out that. So he created the Low Tech Lab in here. They traveled around the world looking for the best low tech innovation. And this is super inspiring. He also has a great energy, and he did something which is really, really hard to do, is that he managed to find the perfect fit between his passion, which is traveling by boat and being in contact with nature, and his mission, which is bringing the low tech subjects to the table. So those are 2 people I say I'm inspired by. Then there are dead people also, which accounts for. And the sports, I'm a huge fan of triathlon, and then we have our double world champion Vincent Louis in France, which I also admire because sportsmen, they might not change the world every day, but they are proof of like they show you how hard you can work and how dedicated you can be. So it's also a strong source of inspiration, even if they have a really bad carbon footprint. It's still something inspiring.
All heroes don't wear capes, or what do you say? Thank you so much. Those are great role models. Guys, if you haven't been able to like write them down or anything, don't worry. I will ask Gabriel for all his resources that he's shared, and we will share them with you guys after the talk. So, and before I move on to the next question, I just wanted to let you guys know that after this question, we will be doing a Q&A. So I guess you can get your brains thinking about what kind of questions you want to ask Gabriel, and the chat is open if you want to put your questions there, or after we have finished recording, you can also ask your questions in person, virtually in person. Just giving you a heads up there. So the final question I have, we've gone through so many different advice already on for people curious in this field, but I just wanted to ask you like one final time what your like hands-on advice would be for anyone who's looking to explore engineering would be that you've learned.
Yeah, so there are two parts of that answer, which is one is more pragmatic and one is more I'd say mission driven, maybe philosophical or sustainability. In terms of something you should definitely want to do is, if you want to know what's happening in the market, in the job market, you should look out to job offers. So have a look at what LinkedIn is proposing, and then you can have an idea of what the skills people want you to have are, and you can get prepared to get into the world of the professional world better. There's a lag. So if you just start your career 5 years later, of course, it's not going to be the same skills. So try not to take that one technology that everyone wants today too deeply, but at least understand what are the skills from this technology, I'd say, you need to have. We talked a little bit about that before, but if you can do side projects with your university, it's better. If you can do it by yourself, it's good also, but really have things first to show. We discussed that. If you can show things, that's the best way to convince people. And by doing, you're going to learn so much. You're going to learn really, really a lot. And that's super true for software engineering, but also for hardware engineering. What I usually say is I learned to do electronics using my nose, because you can smell when things are burning and you know something is going wrong. And this is the kind of stuff you can't read in a book. And you know that when you smell something, you should not touch that one resistor. You should wait a bit, and you shouldn't. Okay, what's the current there again? Okay, let's do the math. Okay, that's why. So by learning, you're going to have really a tremendous amount of experience. Regarding the skill sets you want to develop, also, it's always tricky to know, do I want to be super specialized or do I want to be more generalist? The advice I take for in the early stage maybe is you should try to have at least one superpower. So you should know, you can know a little bit about everything, but if you have one true superpower and say, okay, I can do that really well, or I can do that well and I'm willing to learn a lot on that one topic, then it's really going to be great for you. Yeah, so that's the more pragmatic approach. And then if we talk more about the mission and the equilibrium with your life, I think it's really important for engineers to get out of the technical stuff. So read a lot about or discuss a lot or listen to a podcast or whatever works for you, whatever works with the time you have. Read about history, about philosophy. I wrote down, find the human in you, because this is something that's really going to be needed. Of course, we need really good technicians, but we need technicians which want to go to work because they understand what they do is meaningful. They want to challenge what they are doing, saying, oh, I don't think it's right, or it's the other way around. And also getting a bit of the historical background in what you're doing enables you to understand what's going to happen. If we take the I don't know, the history of plastic, how it grew suddenly, how it's now a good investment actually for oil companies. It's interesting to understand what's going to happen. If you take the example of vehicles, individual vehicles, and you learn about that big cartel in the US, they actually had a tram system that worked, but they did everything they could to dismantle it, to push people to buy cars. You understand, okay, so it's actually something we've done before. We can go back to that. A new version, of course, we can go back to that. Yeah, same with electric cars. We've had electric cars for, I don't know centuries, but at least more than 100 years. That's for sure. No, it's just it has been a turning point, and there were two ways. We hopped on one. Doesn't mean we can't change ways. So be super curious about the history of everything, but in tech and science, if you want to, can be a great way to develop your thoughts.
I think that's a really good point, because I ask every professional on these interviews what advice they have, but I've never heard the history one before, like looking into the history, because obviously knowing the history will help you to be able to implement what you want to happen in the future, looking back, because history might repeat itself, or maybe finding inspiration from history that you can use in the future. I think that's a really, really, really good advice. So thank you for that, Gabriel. I will be closing the interview part of this interview. So I just wanted to thank everyone who's been watching this video. And if you want to connect with Gabriel, he's on LinkedIn. I will link his profile below. And if you want to learn anything more about Nexgen Careers, about our career design, career development, or skills development courses, please go to our website, www.nexgencareers.co. Or you can also reach out to me directly on LinkedIn if you have any questions. And I will pause the recording here, and those of you who wants to stay for a Q&A, feel free to do so.